Hello and welcome. A couple of days ago, I was in South Africa and I experienced for the first time in my life an overt and incredibly horrible incident of racial profiling. Racial profiling is something I rarely ever hear about or experience, particularly within my immediate circle of friends, family, and influence. And so when it happened, I was knocked for six. And it's only once I was back in the United Kingdom and I'd had time to reflect on the 12-hour flight, I knew something positive had to come out of the incident. And although this video is incredibly heavy for me to make, it's an incredibly important video as well. I'm Anesu Sagonda and I produce educational luxury content for anyone after the finer things, whether you're young and starting out in life and wanting to reap the benefits of buying better quality from the get-go, or you're into luxury but you want to focus more on high quality under the radar brands, or you're new to money and wanting to learn how to navigate the terrain, then my content is geared towards you. I was in South Africa attending a family extravaganza, for use of a better word. I was celebrating a fairly significant family event and we partied hard for 2 weeks. And towards the end of the 2 weeks, I decided to pull away for a couple of days with my partner just to recharge in preparation for the last day, which was going to be the biggest, the best, the most raucous party of all. We're going to end on a massive high. And we decided to escape to Cape Town and spend an absolutely delightful 2 days in what ended up being an absolutely wonderful hotel. The pictures online did not do justice to the place we stayed in, called La Petite Ferme. And it's a boutique hotel nestled within Franschhoek, and it is a wonderfully intimate, romantic place, perfect for couples. They don't sell themselves as a couple hotel, but it is perfect. If you're a couple and you just want somewhere discreet, somewhere intimate, somewhere that's a little unusual, somewhere you don't hear a lot about, it's fantastic. And I remember thinking, I have to talk about this place because it's perfect for my channel. It's high quality and under the radar. We had the most delightful stay up until the very end. The last day, we left about midday. Woke up and my partner wasn't feeling well. So it was left to me to organize breakfast, get it delivered to the bedroom, settle the final bill. We'd wanted to pick up a couple of paintings, sort out the payment and so forth. So I wandered over to the dining room where they had a buffet breakfast. Everything was organic, freshly baked, beautifully laid out. Everything was absolutely delicious. We were always very well set up every morning. So I wandered over to sort out breakfast and get it delivered to the bedroom. Couldn't find any members of staff, so wandered into the restaurant and went to the central reservation, found a member of staff and ordered the hot breakfast, and then went to the buffet table to then pick up the cold bits and then get everything sent to the room. And the intention was to sit on our veranda, plunge pool, the vineyards in front, and then the most breathtaking views of Franschhoek. And we stayed in a really nice suite called Provençal. So it was absolutely perfect. I was on a massive high and placed my order and then wandered over to the buffet table. As I neared the buffet table, I walked past a white couple, 2 men. And I say white because during the course of our stay, I was the only black guest in the entire hotel. And as I walked past, one of the men, it was a gay couple, one of the men, without looking, he was looking down, from the corner of his eye, he must have seen my black hand and wrongly assumed I was staff. And he didn't even look up. He just went, "Can I get a tea?" And I knew he was talking to me, so I stopped and responded accordingly. And his partner immediately tried to explain to him that I wasn't a member of staff. I was just black, but she's not staff. And without missing a beat, I responded and carried on towards the buffet table. And as I neared the buffet table, I noticed another couple, but this is a couple I hadn't met before, whereas the first couple, they had met me before. The partner who had tried to tell his partner knew me, and he awkwardly smiled because he had smiled the day before at breakfast. And as I reached the buffet table, the other couple, older, the gentleman was about old enough to be my father, so he was about mid-70s. And he turned to look at me, and he looked at me up and down several times. And I smiled to myself. I knew what he was thinking. And I very confidently walked towards him. I was poised. I knew I was appropriately attired. I smelled good. I had expensive jewelry on. So I knew I looked like everyone else. I didn't stand out. And I blended in very comfortably. And if he was somebody who was discerning, he would have known that I wasn't wearing anything aspirational. But if he looked at the details, the quality, he would have noticed. But he turned around and said, "Can you get me a tea?" And again, I appropriately responded. And I knew he'd get upset because I knew he'd automatically assume I was a lot younger than I look. And he became very defensive and he started lecturing me. I responded and walked away. I had been caught off guard both times, but I tried to be incredibly gracious. I was on a massive high in South Africa for a significant family event. I couldn't be any happier. I withdrew myself, went and spoke to the manager and explained what happened. And on reflection, there are 3 things I really would like to talk about. And for the situation to change, it needs to start somewhere. And I'd like to start on my channel because I think I have an audience that can help. It may be a little, but they can help make a difference. The first thing I'd really like to say, and this is earnestly from the bottom of my heart, if you are white and you happen to be at an establishment and you come across a black person who is not attired like staff, you need to be very, very sure they are not staff before you address them. And if you do make the horrible mistake of assuming someone is staff, and I understand how the mistake happened because at La Petite Ferme, all of the staff were either black or colored. But I wasn't attired, nor did I behave, nor did I present like a member of staff. If you make the mistake of assuming and you find out someone isn't staff, apologize. Just say, "I'm sorry," and keep quiet. I would be more inclined, and it very much depends on you, the body language of the other person, to say, "I'm sorry. How can I make it up to you?" Or if I made the same mistake, I would say, "I am so sorry," and I would pay for their meal very discreetly, or I would get flowers sent to their room. That's just me, and I don't expect that. But what I expect is if you wrongly make the assumption someone is staff just because they present like the staff in terms of their race, just say, "I'm sorry," and keep quiet. The second thing that happened, the day before the horrible incident with the 2 couples, again, I'd walked towards the buffet table and I noticed somebody already there, and it was a small buffet table. It wasn't big, and I didn't want to crowd her because she was around the fruit bowl, which is what I also wanted. And I smiled and I said, "Oh my goodness, so many delicious choices. Where do you even begin?" And she looked at me from the corner of her eye, looked me up and down, and then walked off. And I just giggled to myself. I thought, "Oh, you can't make it up." So I'm always aware things like that can happen. But during the course of every single breakfast, what I thought was the manager was actually a director. And I found out a director is somebody who is financially invested in the business. And he went around to every table greeting the guests. And I distinctly remember when he came over to our table, he was incredibly diffident and he was awkward. He didn't make eye contact and he kept fiddling with the ring on his finger. And the conversation was painful. And I thought, oh my gosh, why would they make him a manager? And the lady who I actually thought was the manager, a colored lady, said, no, he's a director. I'm a member of staff. And I thought, they should have made you the manager. And he came over and asked about our morning, if we had any activities and so forth. And my partner was monosyllabic. I'm the chatty one, and I didn't salvage the situation and try and make conversation because we have two rules in our house. Firstly, because once you hit 50, calories become a lot harder to shift. If you're eating something you're not enjoying, stop. The second is, if you're not enjoying a conversation with someone, very graciously remove yourself from the conversation because it'll bring the worst out of you if you have a conversation with somebody you're not enjoying talking to. And I remember observing the director and just how awkward he was, and my partner just being monosyllabic. And I knew he wanted him to go away as quickly as possible. And when I was speaking to the manager about the unfortunate incident, and I mentioned, yesterday you went around, and my partner actually picked up on the fact that you greeted everyone except us. We chose to stay here. It's not the cheapest place because we paid a premium because we would like comfort and we would like the experience. And that is what the premium to us represents. And he turned around and said, well, your partner was monosyllabic, so I thought you don't want to be interrupted. And I said, oh, I did notice. I'm typically the chattier one. But I was incredibly charged about what had previously happened. And I was trying to find a way of calming myself and not being as angry and still being chilled and relaxed and aware of my environment. And I'd wanted to say to him, you were incredibly diffident. And I wasn't in the space to be able to say to him, you were so diffident when you approached us. It was awkward. It was painful for everybody, if we're honest. I have been to enough high-end properties around the world. And one thing I've observed is the manager will always go around to every single guest at some point during the day. And some guests are chattier than other guests. But even if a guest is not chatty, you need to go to every single guest, take the cue from them and just greet them and find out what's going on. The entire time I was in the dining room, he never looked at me. He never acknowledged me. I know he noticed me a few times. And when he walked past a couple of times, he could have said good morning. He didn't. It is so important that managers are consistent and you have to bounce back. Even if someone's not chatty, the next day you still greet them and you take the cue from them. But it can't be a case of, well, they weren't chatty, therefore I'm going to ignore them, because we still observe you talking to everybody else. And then a lot of things are open to misinterpretation. The third, and this is the most important, I have been incredibly fortunate enough to travel to many amazing places in the world, stayed in fabulous properties. But what I've noticed consistently is that I am always the only black person. And I'm always left wondering why. Last year, specifically went to Atlanta in Georgia because between 40 to 50%, it fluctuates, of my audience is American. 50% of that figure is aged 35 to 44. And then 30% of that figure is aged 44 and above. So I know I have a fairly affluent audience, mature consumers who have been working for a number of years, so they do have disposable income. And I went to Atlanta, Georgia, because I wanted to see black wealth, how it presents, how it moves, what it looks like. So I know it's there. What will it take for black people, black Americans, black people from all over the world to holiday in South Africa, to holiday in Cape Town, to holiday in Franschhoek? Because Franschhoek, speaking specifically of the place where I was staying, is absolutely stunning. The property, world class. The accommodation competes like for like, whether you are in New York or Paris, comparing to Le Bristol, Georges V, the Ritz-Carlton, in New York, the Lowell, the Plaza, the Hotel Plaza, Plaza Athénée in Paris, or the Plaza Hotel, or the Hotel Chelsea in New York. The property I was staying in, other properties, not just in South Africa, but Africa, compare like for like when it comes to the quality of the accommodation. The food, absolutely outstanding. You have fewer restaurants that are chasing tourists, the quality of the food, The cooking is exceptional. We have Michelin-worthy stars, but we have yet to be awarded Michelin stars in South Africa. But the quality of cooking is world-class. Franschhoek is not as densely populated, very easy to get around. And I just thought to myself, what will it take to get more Black Americans, Black people visiting top-end establishments around the world? What can I do to influence that, to change that? Because there shouldn't be any reason why Black people shouldn't go to such places. And if we're going to see a change, white guests moving away from racially profiling Black guests, we need to frequent top-end establishments. They need to see us. They need to be comfortable having us around on equal footing. The number of times I've visited establishments, and I'm the only Black person, as I've mentioned, and some people, white people, have met Black people, but not on the same level, typically in a service role, or they've never met Black people, and I become responsible for shaping their impression and creating that lasting, memorable memory of a Black interaction. It's something I rise up to every time and I enjoy. But I'd like to see more Black people. What will it take to have more Black people traveling, seeing and experiencing top-end properties? And what can I do to influence that? And I just thought, what happened to me was really unfortunate. It's the first time I really have experienced something like that. And I know it's common for other people. I know a lot of other people have experienced it. I'm aware. But when it happens to you, it's a shock. And especially considering I was on a massive high. But instead of making something really negative about it, I really would like to take a positive from it and say, what part can I play in influencing my audience to holiday in places like South Africa? Any thoughts, any questions, as always, let me know in the comment section down below.